Good morning, everyone. Let's start with our daily market commentary. Now, what we see first is S&P, and there has been a lot of volatility across the globe due to the currency effect and the trade war. Now, the most important thing on S&P, which we need to understand, is the monthly chart. So, what I have pulled out is basically a monthly chart where we see a good upswing which took place right from the lower levels, and it was climbing smoothly up to the Jan month, and then a slight downside came into effect. The most important point over here, it basically made the first top, and then it again slided down and making the second top. So kind of a double top formation taking place on the monthly chart. Number one. Number two, when I see on the monthly chart, the most crucial point which we basically see is around the neckline which can form going forward. So this 2630 kind of range, if it comes down and it sustains below this, then the entire upside rally gets violated and you can see a downside coming into play, right? So these are just the jitters which will happen, but the agenda is to understand on the higher level where we need to focus and where we need to understand the big important levels are. So these are the most important level. The one number first is 2630 kind of levels, where if this breaks, then only you can see a further downside. The second point to understand for immediate basis is 2700. So on the month side, or let's say for the August month, even if the volatility exaggerates, the point here is it can go up to 2700. So roughly around 100 points downside, which is not much. If you try to see from 2800, it's hardly around 4% downside, which can come into place. So this becomes a huge support point for the monthly juncture, right? The most important point to understand, which people might not look at it at this point in time, the most important juncture is the support line, which we have already noted down. What I would suggest, if the S&P comes around this 2700 zone, and if it sustains this or goes sideways for a couple of months, you can see a fresh uptick or a new all-time high on S&P 500. So what we understand from here, there are clear two distinctions which has happened on the monthly chart. The first point is to understand 2700 should not break. It should slide down, consolidate, and if it starts going up in the month of October, you can find a biggest rally coming into play, right? So apart from all these fears of trade war, the most important point is 2700 should not be breached, and if it consolidates above this, you can see the biggest run happening in the month of October and November, right? So that's the biggest takeaway to understand. The second most important thing, if 2700 breaks and if it sustains below 2620, you are looking for a bigger downside, because if you see the streamline uptick was very smooth, and obviously the downside will also come pretty fast, right? So that is where you need to understand, even if the news flows are negative, do not go by it, just see the charts, believe in it, and just see what it is trying to say, right? So most important point, 2700 in the next 15-20 days is easily likely. The second point, if it sustains for next month or so, you can see a bigger upside rally to start from here on. So 2700 becomes a make or break situation, and on monthly basis, if you see, it has formed continuous support, right? First was resistance, then was support, and going forward, this becomes a crucial juncture. So this is one takeaway from S&P 500. Now let's go back to Nifty and let us see, are we seeing the same things happening on Nifty as well? Now what I see on Nifty, it's again the monthly chart. The most important point on Nifty, it has been a smooth ride all to the point almost 11,000, coming back down, and then it basically takes another high. So this is not similar to S&P 500, where S&P 500 had the same top, but here it's trying to make a higher top, right? So that is some kind of bullishness in Nifty, which we can see over S&P 500. The second point which we need to understand, even if now Nifty slides on the downside, where it can rest. So the first point of understanding is the previous highs can be tested first. So these are the previous highs which was formed. So roughly around 11,050 kind of mark can sustain, or this entire zone of 11,050 to 11,000 becomes very crucial on the monthly format. So one thing is clear, even if Nifty comes down, it has a good resting point in this area and then a subsequent resting point around the base of the Moribazu, which is roughly around 10,600. So the entire rally started from 10,600. It zoomed almost to 11,400. So this is almost 800 points rally that we are seeing. Now the second point to understand, over the course of next 2 months or month and a half, you can see a slight downside which can happen towards 11,000 and then towards 10,600. The most important or crucial juncture, like we've spotted for S&P, for Nifty it is 10,600. So this should not be breached. That is the most important juncture for Nifty. Again, to understand the perspective, can Nifty go on the higher basis or not? Let's just understand the two important levels from the point of 10,600. If Nifty comes down, it comes down in this range of 10,800 or so, okay, and then obviously it should basically take some rest on these higher levels and it can go further up move. So what I see, a correction is basically good for Nifty if it happens in the due course of next 1.5 months, almost towards 10,800, because then it should rest at 10,800 and it will be set for another big rally on the upswing, right? The most important point is it is making higher high and the lows are not yet on the lower side. So it is clearly in the uptrend, but the point to be noted, it is not that clearly in the uptrend because of these other volatility factors which are coming in. So the most important point for Nifty, for next big rally in Nifty, is only possible if it comes down. It will take some rest around this range of 10,800 and then you can see a new rally emerges, right? So what happens over here now for a small or a smaller perspective for, let's say, for 2 weeks or so, obviously you can see Nifty coming down towards 11,000 or towards 10,800 mark, right? So that's a smaller view, but the bigger view and the bigger levels are very important to understand and keep in mind when the markets keep giving you a lot of information. Now what we see over here, as we see on the weekly chart, the rise has been very smooth. So as we were saying, 10,600, it basically went out and crossed its prior resistance, which is there around 10,880 kind of zone. Then this was all-time high kind of levels and tried to zoom higher. Now if I see from weekly perspective, every week has been a green rally, right? Even this downside which happened or started this week, started on a weaker note, what I see is again it has started going on the higher side. The most important point where we need to understand on a smaller time frame, this 10,360 or 10,370 becomes a huge point to understand, because this was the prior top, then it became the support. Second time on the weekly basis, it opened over there and it is zooming higher. Once this level is taken out, there is no stopping for Nifty. So the important point now is 10,370 mark. Once this 370 is taken out, you will see straight Nifty going in one day itself towards 11,000, right? And the second kind of downside can come towards 10,900 to 800 zone. So the problem here is Nifty is not correcting and there is seeing a continuous buying taking place on Nifty. The most problematic point over here is if it keeps doing this and if it keeps Nifty above 370 zone, you are looking for a bigger downside, right? So if it is trying to do a consolidation at the upper end, please try to understand once this level is broken, and that might happen from next week onwards, we can see, or maybe towards the end of the expiry. Most probably, if they are trying to keep it up, I personally feel it might take another week or so to keep the levels maintained above 370, and maybe the last 4 days of expiry will become the most dramatic expiry, where you can see in one day itself 11,000 going off the roof, right? So a good fall can come. The most important point now is 360 or 370 mark on Nifty, and once this is taken out, there is no rescue for Nifty for at least till 11,000 to 10,900 zone, right? So that is what one has to understand. More it sustains on the higher side, more it basically gathers steam for the downside, right? So what is happening over here, every time people go short, they try to keep it up so that all the short people, they get exited from the system. Once they are out and they understand that Nifty is not going any point lower, then all of a sudden you will see a downslide coming into Nifty. So more or less towards the end of the expiry will become the most dramatic expiry of the August series. This is what I basically understand. And the most important from monthly side, we have understood 11,000, 10,800 are the range where it should come. It should rest for some time for the biggest rally to happen in October, November month, right? So the biggest rally can be witnessed in the month of October to November if it comes down, sustains this level, and it tries to go on the higher side. So now let's see whether Bank Nifty is performing the same or trying to give much amount of support to Nifty or not. So what I see on Bank Nifty, which is also very, very strange and unique, the first point or the high was made over here, came back down, it consolidated at these lower levels, did not give away a good downside, did not happen, and then again tried to pursue the higher rally. And then what happened? Two candles over here, and then it basically breached the higher mark, making all-time high. The most important point on monthly side, the low which was made on the month was equivalent to the prior high, right? So obviously this becomes a huge support point, which is the low of the month, and it basically did support around this zone of 27,500. Now what we understand from monthly level, 27,500 obviously will be very, very crucial, and the most important point over here can be a trend line, since it is making higher lows. So if I just make this trend line, it basically comes around this zone where a triangle breakout on the lower side can give a downside rally. But important point to note here is downside is really limited over here in case of Banknifty. So you can basically look at downside around this 26,000 zone, where again on the monthly basis multiple lows have been made at the same level. So two things are important. Bank Nifty 27,500 is important, and if this gets breached, please understand, if 27,500 gets breached, you can see a straight downside of 1,000 points, right? So the 1,000 points downside can clearly be visible, provided that 27,500 is breached. Now going down on the weekly perspective, the monthly formats seem to be very good. Now what I see, there was a triangle breakout here. It tried to sustain this important level all throughout. So on the weekly basis, we get one more point to understand where it has taken multiple support around this range of 26,600 or 650. So what I see over here, it has taken this support. Now it is taking support around this range of 27,780 kind of zone. So the most important point for me on Bank Nifty is 27, to remember it clearly, 27777, right? All sevens. And if it breaches, okay, this is where we were trying to see on Nifty, which was 370, and for Bank Nifty it is 27777. If this gets breached, the first stop is straight away 27,400, and if this gets breached, straight it is towards 26,670. Now when you can understand if these levels get breached next week, you will see a deeper downside almost towards 26,600, right? So knowing that or understanding that, you can make an option strategy. So we can look at some option strategy in Bank Nifty. Let's say if you look for a bear spread, obviously now everybody is interested in bear spread, but Nifty is inching higher, Bank Nifty is inching higher. So let us see which can be a good risk reward mix. Now when I see on Bank Nifty, let's take it to the August expiry. Now what I'm trying to make here is basically a bear spread. So almost 28,000 is where Nifty is right now. If I look at 27,500, okay, so let's note it down, 3 strike prices. So if I'm looking at 27,500 put, so I'm looking at put of 27,500, which is almost trading at, so this is 27,500, around 110. Then if I look at put with the strike of 27,000, okay, which is almost 500 points down, trading around 45 points. And then you have one more put, which is 26,500. So again, 500 points down. 26,500 is around this, where we have 20 bucks. Okay, so the cost of the spread. So if I buy this and if I sell this and I sell one more, so it's kind of a bear ratio kind of setup. So it is Banknifty 30th August bear ratio. Okay, now our agenda is why till 26,500, because I do not see Banknifty inching below 26,500, because if you see, it is right now the current market price is roughly around 28,000, and if it comes to 26,500, that's pretty much a bigger downside that we see on Banknifty. So it won't come almost there. It can max come towards 27,000. So a 1,000 point downside is obviously quite possible in next 10 days of working. So it can come towards 27,000. Now the spread cost comes out to be 110 minus 45 minus 20. Okay, so roughly if you see over here, 45 and 20 is like 65 or 70, and you almost have around 45 is your costing of the spread. Now the most important point to understand, what are the risk reward. Okay, obviously the risk is high if the Bank Nifty goes below 26,500, but try to understand, even if it goes 500 points below, okay, so if expiry happens to be 26,000, still we will suffice, right? So there is no risk till 26,000. Now the most important point on this, we can see an upside of this spread, which is 45, can go almost towards around 350 to 400 points, right? So even if not 350, let's say for conservative basis 250 to 350 range, even if I can get this kind of target, the risk reward is very favorable, right? So risk reward, if I try to see, is almost like 50 bucks here, and 250 to 300 range can give me a risk reward of 1:6 or more, right? So why are we looking out today for bear ratio? So let's understand. We are trying for bear ratio because trying to sell one more strike down, because the volatility is high because of all this trade war, and that is why you're getting higher premium for next 10 days, right? And plus you have Saturday, Sunday coming up, and after this the number of days are very, very less, and these will not move much, right? So this will be a complete premium gainer, and what will happen on this will not lose the premium very fast. Because of volatility, it will keep clinging on till the last time. So that is why we are looking out for bear ratio in the most volatile market. Obviously you need to understand the risk is huge. Below 26,000 you will have a huge losses, but you need to understand till it reaches 26,000 you have a lot of rescue operation which you can do. You can keep buying put, and you can square off your positions as well. So this is where you need to understand how the bear ratio works. So just keep a track on this bear ratio where the risk reward is very good, and let's see how it phases out till the time of expiry. Now before we close out, let's take some of the stocks to understand. So we have understood the levels of Bank Nifty, which seems to be on a strong foothold on the higher side. Obviously this needs to be broken. Even on Nifty we are pretty much clear. 370 is the mark now, which needs to be broken, and now we look out for some of the stocks. Now many people are using the screener, so let us bring out screener where the alerts have come. So right in morning there was Kotak, so everything was red. Right now it basically started showing some green into effect. So now what is more important to understand, Reliance or Tata Steel, Coal India, Vedanta, all these commodity stocks were opening gap down and they are now bullish, right? So complete reversal has happened over here. Reliance has also been gap down bullish. So you can see almost gap down bullish, or Reliance is now acting as a support to Nifty. What I see over here, Tata Motor has suddenly come almost right now to almost around the range of 251 from different set of strategies. So we look at Tata Motors right in the morning. If we see, all were sell. The most important point is to understand ITC is under sell scanner. So we'll go and see what's happening on ITC. It's one of the heavyweight. What's happening on Bajaj Auto? So what I see on Bajaj Auto, it has come down right in the morning, there was an alert on Bajaj Auto on buy side. So try to understand market opening gap down and you are getting a buy signal from Bajaj Auto, right? So that can be one of the best risk reward possibility. So always look out for these kind of setups when markets are on the other side. Who are the guys who are basically defying the trend and going up, right? Which is always a good risk reward strategy to trade. Now let's look at some of the auto stocks and then we look at some of the bank stocks. So going down, let's say Bajaj Auto itself. Obviously, auto stocks have not done well over the course of time. So what I see on Bajaj Auto, it's amazing setup because it is the first bottom over here, comes up and makes another bottom almost over here, and now it is trying to make a new high. Now try to understand this is on the daily setup, right? So the most important point is the base has not been violated. The bottom has been maintained the same. The most important point, after a continuous fall, it almost goes sideways, kind of a doji format. Then it goes almost inside the candle formation. And then you see a sudden uptick coming into place. Let's break it further in 4 hours. So we get more information. What happens over here, this was the bottom which was made by the Moribazu, went almost up, sustained below this, one more round of selling. And here we can see what exactly happened. So this was kind of a concession zone almost at the bottom. And the most important point to understand, after this concession zone, it basically took a breakout, right? Always look for these kind of features on the chart. Don't look at stocks which are making 52-week high to buy. Try to understand a stock which has been down for such a long time after the result, kind of a double bottom formation coming into place on the daily chart. The 4 hour is telling you there was a concession for so many days, at least for a couple of days or so, for 2-3 days, even after a round of selling. Always understand, when there has been a continuous selling, obviously people will sell. Then it goes sideways and all of a sudden it goes and passes all the highs which are there. The most important point over here, which I can understand, this becomes a very crucial point to buy, 2657. Now, how did you get 2657? It was continuously been above that, then the red Moribazu, and continuously below that. What happens today? Obviously, today it would have made one more small candle. It did not. It started up and then it almost went above 2658, right? So this is what one has to understand. And when you have this setup in place, the stock has corrected and it cannot go further down. The most important point, currency is up and they have most of the revenues coming from export. So obviously they are kind of exporter like IT and pharma, not Hero Moto but Bajaj Auto, right? So these kind of important pointers should be understood, and this is how you should go out and use the screener. So why am I not taking Kotak Bank? Why am I not taking HDFC Bank? These are already down and he's telling me to sell. I don't want to sell. He's telling me to buy in the wake of market where market has opened gap down. In the entire turmoil, you get an alert of Bajaj Auto at 925. That's absolutely the brilliant kind of setup you can get, right? So once you get inside, you get more confidence and then you can pull out Bajaj Auto, right? So this is what you need to understand. So example, Hindalco, Vedanta, everything was gap down. Now everybody knows. People will go short, and then what is happening? Vedanta has gone gap down bullish. Soon Tata Steel is also up. Soon Hindalco will also go up. So these are basically a trap which we understand. So next time onwards, when you know it is gap down and it turns bullish, you can again look in to buy these kind of stocks. So always pulling out reversals are one of the best trades out. Again, what I see apart from Bajaj Auto, I get more confidence because another auto segment, Maruti, is also trading higher. So 180 was the call and it is almost around 210. So what we get an idea, when we are buying auto segment, you have the master leader also pulling the rally, right? So if the auto segment is up, obviously Bajaj Auto will also get some more weightage on the upside. So this is how you need to use this scanner. So a scanner is not basically will give you the best trades possible. It will just scan out the best possibilities and you need to pull the trigger. And now suddenly I'm getting Tata Motors. So what I understand from down to top, first was Bajaj Auto. Suddenly then I get Maruti. Now I'm getting Tata Motors, right? So this is how you need to go out and see, okay, Bajaj Auto and pulling up the strength. Obviously it has good amount of strength to go almost towards 2700, right? So the upper target can easily be reached towards 2700, at least for the day, right? And then obviously if it sustains above this, you can see one more side of rally. Now let's look at Maruti and Tata Motors. So when I look at Maruti, the same thing has happened. Let's look at the daily side and then look inside what exactly has happened. From the top, went down, first bounce, came down. So almost this was a no-brainer and it came down. So this was not the first bounce. Then again it came down. So this is your first bounce. Then it comes down. Again it forms a second bounce, almost in the making of the second bounce. Now try to understand. When the fall is so fast, then it is going sideways. And one fine day, it basically inches higher. When the fall is fast, the rise will be very, very fast. So this is also one of the good takeaway which one should understand. Kind of a double formation over here, trying to go down every day. Please understand, it was falling every day. Shorts get trapped, it goes sideways, and suddenly you see upswing coming into place. Right now, let's look at 4 hours, and you will have much more clear understanding. So what was over here? Continuously downside. What I see over here, almost a kind of congestion around this zone, right? So if I see on the lower side for last 4 days or last 4 hours candles, this was the high which was maintained. What happened today? It opens gap down, inches higher, breaks 1, 2, 3, 4 candles high, then almost goes out and breaks all these highs. So around 8 candles are eaten away by Maruti's today's upside. So obviously the strength is huge, but agenda here is to pick it around 9155. So moment it crosses this, you should be in the trade, because you know that it is a small congestion zone which has been passed, kind of a double bottom formation or a rounding formation taking into place. Once this level is taken, the straight target for today will be around 9234, and that is the exact high. If you see what was the high of Maruti today, it was exactly at the Moribazu. So even if now it sustains higher and it crosses this, the next level is 9308. So if you have the trade right over here, should I put my profit over here at 9237? Absolutely not. Keep holding on to your trade, because if it goes here and if it sustains on the higher side, and it will inch towards 9300. And if it sustains here and rise on the higher side, it can almost come towards 9450. So these kind of trades should be taken, and you can also do it in option if you try to look it out for next 3 days. If your holding period is for 3 days, then only look out for options. Trading options intraday might not give you enough amount of risk reward, but at least for 3 days, risk reward will be very fantastic. The agenda here is the stock should be broken. It should go sideways so that the calls become cheap, and in the wake of this volatility, you go out and buy a call option, right? So it should be cheaper and the volatility is high. Everything will basically work in your favor. So these kind of trades should be taken. So this was a beautiful trade of Maruti as well as Bajaj Auto. Now look at Tata Motor. Now I'm very much convinced Tata Motor itself is broken down too much. So what's happening on Tata Motor front? If you see right from top, there has been multiple bounce all the way. The most important point of Tata Motor, this was a huge support line on Tata Motor. And then what happened? It was almost below this support line for so many days. So 4-hour candles below the major support line, right? So that was the one point which one has to understand. Then people are more bearish. More often, if you see, the fall was so fast. And suddenly what takes it that it goes sideways? It doesn't fall anymore, right? It was a continuous fall. It falls one more time and then it goes sideways. This clearly shows this guy does not want to go down, right? If a big fall and below a bigger support zone is being breached, it is making the same highs. Now, I'm not saying you should go and buy, but what happened today? It opens gap down, kind of double bottom formation, and then it inches higher above these highs. So our entry level would have been around this 249, 250 mark, right? Obviously, you cannot say right in the morning whether it will go or not. Once it breaches, it is a clear indication the downside is stopped. It is going sideways. The important level or the highs have been breached again, which is 249 or so. You can enter the rally. The first target is 252. Now how you are getting 252? The same high of the Moribazu will be basically given the level of resistance on the upper side. So this was your first target, and if it inches higher or sustains above this, there is a straight target on Tata Motors of 257 to 260 zone. Right? So always look out for stocks which are making bottoms, and you need to be very, very sharp in buying these bottoms. The risk reward is very huge when the stocks make 52-week low, kind of a double bottom formation, which gives you more assurance. The second continuous fall is being stopped. It almost goes sideways, and then you have a rise coming into place. That is why we have made this scanner, so that at least now we have understood, okay, fine. The scanner might give you an alert little late because these are delayed signals. So it has given you around 251. Okay. And it comes through so many strategies. The most important point of the scanner is giving you at 251. But agenda here is you should have pointed it out a 2 rupee earlier, that it would have been a buy signal at 249 or 250 zone. Right. And if I look inside and see on the hourly side what exactly has happened. So market open gap down, first 1 hour itself, a strong bull candle. The second hour, it is trying to inch higher and it crosses the mark that you wanted, right? So if you now go in the 15-minute, so people who trade intraday, they look at daily, then they go for 4 hour, then they go for 1 hour, then they go for 15 minutes, and to be very, very clear or sure, it goes into 5 minutes also. But agenda here in 15 minutes, things are so clear. It goes up, goes above yesterday's close. This was around yesterday's close. If I place it over here, and then what happens in these 3 candles? So I know the high has to be breached, right? But what happens for 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes? It's 45 minutes. It is trying to sustain above yesterday's close. That clearly shows there is a kind of a good upswing waiting for you. So once you see this, second comes down, third it comes up, and then it tries to reach on the higher side. This is the point you should pull the trigger, right? So these are the pointers that one has to take into consideration when you want to trade intraday. Find your setup and then you trade. Now the problem here is you do not have your setup. So if you don't have your setup, look at these alerts. Okay, which of the alerts are there? So Tata Motor is coming, so it is a clear indication. Bajaj Auto, then Maruti, then Tata Motor. So look only at the auto side. Now look at the Hero Moto. What is he doing? So these are the screeners which will basically help you if you are going to trade intraday. You should know which stocks to focus on, right? So that is why we have made this. It's free. You can use the link which is there over here, and you can also have this on your laptop. So this is where you try to see the auto segment. Now let's take the banking side, right? Because the banks are performing well. The most important point which I like about banks are the banks HDFC and Kotak not performing. Still Banknifty is gaining strength, right? So now let's pull it out. So we already know Kotak Bank is down because of the preferential share issue kind of stuff. Straight away opens gap down. Okay. Now try to understand, if it opens gap down, you cannot do anything, and you cannot keep on going selling at this particular juncture. Suddenly what will happen, you might find a slight uptick coming into place. So selling at making new lows, if you go and sell, it is not the correct way to trade. The most important point now, Kotak Bank is down, HDFC Bank, as I told you, both the big guys are down. Even HDFC going gap down and down. So it is little irony because the best banks are not performing, right? They are not on the uptick. Let's see IndusInd Bank, which was making 52-week high. Now suddenly when it was making 52-week high, it has also started going on the downside. Now you can see the lower highs are being made even on IndusInd Bank. The most important point for IndusInd Bank is around this zone, 1968 kind of zone, where it formed the first bounce and it was multiple support taken over here. It is coming back to that same zone, and if it goes down below this, there is a free fall towards 1900. So one should look at IndusInd Bank for a sell opportunity, but only below, sustaining below this 1968 zone. Now let's come out for Yes Bank. Now Yes Bank had already corrected. This was the result point which went sideways and then sudden downswing came into picture, and then gap up and it again zoomed one side higher. It again zoomed up, almost trying to make the new high. Again 3 days it was down. Then you find a good upswing coming into place. Now this rally can come back again towards 390 zone, right? So this was very, very important. When we basically first time in the last commentary, we noted that 380 kind of zone is important. It went below this and it gave a downside, and then suddenly it basically comes up. Now the point is again very much clear. Let him go up, let him come back down, and the multiple support is around this range of 380, right? So let him come down, and if it goes down below these levels, you can look for downside. So below this it will come very fast. 380 will come down to 370, because this was the rise which took place, number one. Number two, it will come down almost towards 360. So the fall in Yes Bank will be so fast if it now takes a U-turn and comes back. So 330 to 360 will be a very smooth ride, right? So IndusInd Bank, Yes Bank, already both can give you a good downside, provided that it basically violates the bigger levels. Now let's take the two banks which have not performed that good in terms of their results. ICICI Bank, what I see from the bottom is I see double bottom kind of formation almost at the high, and then inching almost towards its fresh highs. Now what is more important over here, this was the second top, the lower one. It came down, it basically made a gap down. The most important point over here was it basically sustained above this gap. So this was a gap down. Actually it should have gone down. The second day no, third day it is inching above this level, and that is why you see it is trying to be on the higher side. The same thing applies now for ICICI Bank. This is the base level for ICICI Bank, and the most important was the Moribazu which was formed with a gap up, right? So ICICI Bank will not be weak. Please understand, it will not be weak till it comes back down below this level of 327 and 320. Then only you can see a slide on the downside. Otherwise it keeps fluttering on the sideways on the higher zone, right? So HDFC and Kotak are pulling down, but you can see ICICI, Yes Bank are pulling it up. Now let's take Axis Bank. Even Axis Bank, we saw a continuous up rally taking place after the result, going down, forming a rounding bottom over here, almost at the lower levels, and then it started inching higher. So this was the rounding bottom, gap up above this, and then you see again gap up, and again it is pulling itself on the higher side. So what we see over here, it always comes back down to the previous high to test, and then it tries to inch on the higher side. Now the most important level for Axis Bank obviously are the levels where it has tested again. So these are the range around 600 or so where it has tested, and then you saw the upside coming into place, and the Moribazu levels which are around the 610 to 611 kind of zone, right? So this is very, very important zone for Axis Bank, or almost around 612 to 605 zone. So let him come down again, and if it sustains on the higher side, obviously it will provide support to Banknifty. Once it inches below the 612 mark, you are looking out for a good downside almost to 588 in no time. So the previous high, test of the previous high, this was the previous high, test of the previous high can now become the future target. So 585 can be a good downside for Axis Bank, but currently there is a good upside on Axis Bank. There is no way where we can see ICICI and Axis Bank going down, right? So these are the levels which one should focus. Smaller level, even you can say around 620 has to be breached. The 20 has to be breached, then the lower base of the Moribazu has to be taken out. Then only you can look for 586 or so, right? So what I see now, Axis, ICICI Bank, both are going high. HDFC and Kotak are going low. Let's go and see what's happening on SBI. So SBI also did not give amazing results, but the most important point, the highs were made over here, and what happened around this zone, which was the important point over here, the high was made, it went higher almost to this level and came back down. So 300 becomes a make or break for SBI, and it sustains down, tries to test it first time, second time, third time. Now it is not coming to this zone, right? So you can see a good downside for SBI almost towards 270 zone, right? So 270 is just the gap which is there, and the fast ride on the upside took place. That is why you can see a good downside. So the most crucial point for SBI is not to go above 300. This was that gap down point, and it tried to sustain there. Should not go above this 300 mark. The most important is on the downside, if you want to see, this was the base which was formed. On 290, it has spent a lot of time. This was the resistance, became the support, came almost towards 290 almost once, and not the second time. So here on the higher side, short should not breach 300, but if it breaches 290, you can see a straight downside towards 275. Now try to understand what I gauge from these banks, specifically SBI, ICICI, and Axis Bank, and even Yes Bank. If they hold on to their gains at the higher side, Bank Nifty will not come down. Please understand, right? So when I'm seeing Bank Nifty, it is almost also on the higher side. So it can go and reach towards 28,200 or on the higher side. It will not go down. So what will make Bank Nifty go down? Okay, so these four banks, we need to see their important levels, and if they reverse, that is where you will find Bank Nifty pulling out below 2777 mark towards this 27,400, and once the free fall starts, you can also get 26,800. So you can see a downside of 1200 points or 1000 points on Bank Nifty, provided that the ICICI, Axis, Yes Bank, and SBI face resistance at the higher level, right? So if they go sideways, Bank Nifty goes sideways, and if it goes down, Bank Nifty goes down, and the levels are breached, you can find Bank Nifty almost towards 27,000 by minimum coming into place. So what I see from the dates point of view, almost one more day left and the week gets over. So it was a truncated week, but next week is a full-blown working week, and then you have approaching towards the expiry. So more or less, it might take 2-3 days to consolidate at the higher levels, which might be till Wednesday or so. A small reversal should happen on Thursday and Friday, and these 4 days towards the expiry will become very, very crucial, where we can see these banks, if they reverse from their highs towards below the precious levels, you can see a big downside in last 4 days, right? And what happens, problem here is you will always see volatility, and if you see S&P on the daily side, what it has done, it does go down, it has opened gap down, and if you see now on S&P, the higher levels are not broken. So when on the 4-hourly chart, the most important point for S&P was 2838, where gap down happened, went down, tested it twice, couple of times, but they never went above this. So it clearly shows it's in down sync. The second point, which was very important, was around this 2800 mark, because this was the point where it was multiple resistance was taken and the slide took place on the upside, came back down over here, took the first bounce, and straight away opened gap down, and it went down. Now what's happening over here, it went down and it got pulled up, because down, if you see, it is a bigger support waiting on its way. Multiple times it has taken support around this zone. So obviously it will take some support around this zone where you find buying coming into place. Now this is not a good buying which has taken place. Please understand. What happens when the volatility is there, the fresh buying does not come. Okay, it's majorly the short covering that will always play out. Now what is happening over here, it is trying to breach on the higher side. The most important point is the gap down point. If this doesn't taken out by S&P in next 3-4 days, right, as I was saying, if it goes sideways, you will have another rally on the downside. So from the upside towards 2800, and once this bigger level of 2800 is breached, you can find lower levels coming into play, right? So the downside will be very fast on S&P if this 2800 level is taken out. So keep in mind when this is happening, and on the upper side, are things reversing or not? So 2828 kind of level is very, very crucial for S&P, and we keep an eye on that. And we have seen that it is forming gap down, testing it, never goes up, gap down, testing it. Let's see if it never goes up. If it never goes up, you are basically looking for break of 2800 and a slight downside rally towards the end of expiry, right? So keep that in mind, and let's see how it pans out. So trade safe, try to be in options, don't trade futures, and always go opposite the wind. So everything was opening gap down, you should have looked for call opportunities, right? So this is the best way to trade volatility, and you get it cheap as well. Fine. So thank you very much for joining in. We'll connect again tomorrow.